hear the word opera, do your eyebrows raise? Opera? Do you hear how opera and eyebrows fit together? Our special guest for this show is going to tell about it. I'm Jill Russell, host of Happy Skin Over 50. And I want to announce again that all of my guests on this show are not over 50. So I'm going to bring on our guest. Yes.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, Julianna. I want our audience to meet Julianna Milin. Brow Design International is your company, right?
Yes.
And you're coming to us live on this video show, and it will also be in a podcast later from New York City.
Yes, right smack in the middle of Midtown. It's where
Let's jump right into the opera part of this show, and not necessarily singing opera because I obviously don't, but you have been an opera singer worldwide, all over the world, right?
Yeah, I have all over United States, Europe, Eastern Europe, even Asia. I sang in China and Hong Kong as well. Yeah, it's been quite a ride. It's been very difficult during COVID because I haven't left the USA until it's kind of died down a little bit. But I'm looking forward to getting back into the swing of things, hopefully by the fall or definitely by next year. But yeah, that's
And I'm
been my
looking
journey.
forward to following you and your journey. You were
Thank
going to,
you.
you've got a podcast, and you've got lots of things up coming in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Yeah,
talk.
yeah,
Let's talk about brows.
sure. Okay. Do you have questions about brows? Or you just want me to go at
I,
it?
I have a statement about brows. I,
Okay.
I yes, I took a certification course, a tattoo course, using the machines uh, quite a few years ago. And the main reason I was doing it, I wanted to correct a lot of the mistakes that I saw in the permanent makeup and semi-permanent makeup that I was seeing on people worldwide, actually. And then I was at a trade show, and one of your trainers was there giving
Mm-hmm.
the demonstration, I believe, doing micro channeling. And at that time, I believe we called it microblading
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
with the pigments. And she was so educational and had so much good. And so, because this is a specialty, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Design.
It's a very specific technique, and there's only one right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though people might disagree with me, but there is only one right way, and there's actually a lineage to it, to microblading. It actually started in Taiwan. People don't know this, and the reason why I know this is because I went to China in 2018 to actually learn how to do it from a master who's been microblading for about 30 years. I bet nobody knew that microblading's been a thing for 30 years. It has been. And I'll tell you the story, actually. I was in Guangzhou, and I was taking a private one-on-one with a Chinese master. And he explained to me the story that it started in Taiwan about, I would say at this point, it must have been 35 years ago. There was a man whose best friend came down with cancer, and through the chemotherapy treatments lost her eyebrows. So he took it upon himself, and he's the inventor, and I don't know his name. I wish I did. He took it upon himself to take tattoo needles, or even a blade. I think at that time it was a blade, and to cut her skin into eyebrows and then rub the pigment into the skin. And what a lot of people don't understand about Asia is that's actually it's a traditional tattoo technique to cut the skin and then rub it in. In fact, they still practice like that today. So from Taiwan, then people from Hong Kong went to Taiwan to learn the technique. And then Hong Kong and Guangzhou and China are actually just separated by a land border. They're basically the same people. So the Chinese went to Hong Kong to learn it and then brought it to mainland China. And then the Chinese, being as entrepreneurial entrepreneurial and as industrious as they are, just perfected the technique. And then we had then who brought it to the West? I'm going to say his name. His name is Branko Babic of Fibrows from Serbia. He recognized this and he went to Guangzhou, China, sat in the very same chair that I did, learned the technique, and then brought it to the West. And that's where it became famous. So there is only one correct way to do microblading. There is no, let's take a face and just kind of paint hair strokes. No, it doesn't work like that. It needs to be done at a certain depth, at a certain angle, with a certain stretch and a certain pressure in order for it to heal properly. And it's supposed to heal in a way that it heals in crisp hair strokes that fade over time. That's been a little adulterated here in the West now and in the States, where people just think that it's okay just to do whatever they want, and then the healed result is never good. As we circle back to your statement, why you started learning machine. And do you want to tell me a little bit about that? What you saw and why you wanted to pick up machine?
Well, I was doing machine. That is what I learned on. I do not practice, but that is what I learned on, was the tattoo with the machine, and then the microblading, and it evolved into just changing the name to micro channeling and saying that using a wire filament and pigment, but I really thought there are so many people that need their eyebrows corrected, and that I was taking it. However, I did not, in my area of the world, and rural East Texas, there was not a market for that. So I didn't pursue that, but facials and skincare is my passion. So that's what I do. But of course I see a lot of these, and I have clients that come in that have blue eyebrows and triangle eyebrows. And it's like, oh my goodness. You need to go see Julianna Milin. And by the way, brow design.
Your instincts were correct. Your instincts are correct to pick up machine, because that is the only way, even though you say you don't do it anymore, but you were right, because that's the only way to correct bad microblading. If there are certain circumstances in the client's eyebrows that are present, A, that it's not saturated, B, that the color isn't way too off, C, the shape is within the normal confines of a natural eyebrow. If that's the case, you can, with machine, do correction. You can't correct it with microblading. But unfortunately, if those circumstances are not present and the brows are too saturated with ink, or the shape is too far out of the natural shape of the eyebrow, it's impossible to make a correction without removal. And unfortunately, I've had to either turn clients away or put them through the removal process. Now, I say that with extreme caution, because removal for me is the last resort. If I can correct it without a removal, I would prefer to do that because it's better for the client. But let's face it, it's not always possible.
When someone comes in and wants a correction, do you do that all in one session, or is it multiple sessions if you have to do a correction and then, if you have to do a removal and then you have to do a correction? Is that all in one appointment?
No. Again, it depends. If the shape is workable, then the first thing if I can correct it with just machine, I'll do that. But if it's too saturated and I'm not able to get enough pigment, I'm not able to get the pigment in there in such a way that it's going to look good. Because let's back up a little bit. Think about the skin like a sponge. If we have the sponge that is too full of water, we can't add any more water into that sponge. We have to wring it out. So the removal process is the process of wringing out pigment, or taking out pigment, so then we can put a better pigment in with a better technique. So if I can do that in one session, that's great. If it's too saturated, then I will remove some of the saturation. And if the shape is workable, that should only take one session, really. I use extract. Extract works very quickly, and it removes, usually with the first session, I get 50% of the pigment out with extract, unless there's a lot of scar tissue. Then the first session is breaking through scar tissue. And then it can take longer, because the scar tissue will sit on top of the skin, and we have to break through the scar tissue just to even get at the bottom of the ink. So the first session, oftentimes with these clients, is just breaking the scar tissue. And what's funny about that is when you break the scar tissue up, of the first session, sometimes a pigment will become brighter and more vibrant and more obvious. Like I have a girl who I'm working on in Houston, and she had all this pink scar tissue over microblading. I did the first session on her, and then she came back. I'm going to post photos later when I take my professional photos. But when she came back, you could actually see the microblading strokes underneath because I had removed the scar tissue. Now the next removal is going to be easier because I don't have to break through that scar tissue. So it really depends. There's another lady who's almost ready. She's had 4 sessions with me. She had really, really bad shape in bad saturation. I don't know where she got it done. So we've had to remove all of it, and I'm almost ready to put new eyebrows on her. So usually in most cases, if the shape is workable, 1 session is enough to get the ink out to be able to lie down a better brow.
Now, would that be keloid scarring, or have you run into that with any of your clients with keloid scarring after the microblading that someone else has done?
I haven't run into it personally. And for me, they would have to sign a waiver to have them understand that it's extremely dangerous for me to work on them with keloid scars. But if they're willing to take an experiment and not sue me if it goes wrong, then, you know, I'd be willing to take it on because it's possible. It's possible. We're still doing case studies on that, not me, but Extract, who I'm working with. So I'm not going to make any claims that it can work, but it's possible. So, you know, if they don't feel safe with me, and I'm always telling everybody to always go to the doctor and get a doctor's opinion. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dermatologist. I'm a beautician. That would be my best recommendation. If they've exhausted everything and they really want to make it a try, I will do it. Allergies, on the other hand, absolutely, positively, I can get rid of allergies. Extract, the removal system that I use is the only removal system that can take away allergies. In fact, we've had doctors send their patients to us to remove ink allergens out of their skin. We have many case studies on that. So that's kind of cool.
How have pigments, talking about that and the allergies, how have pigments changed during the time that you have been doing the permanent makeup?
Well, okay. Well, when I started, it was 2015, and we didn't have organic pigments back then. Well, we did, but they weren't very popular. So we were using iron oxides, which I really love them. The only problem with iron oxides was I noticed over time, and it's not just me, like thousands of other artists, they do have a tendency to go red. So as artists, we have to decide, you know, whether we're willing to do with the graying that can happen with organics if we go too dark, or if we're willing to be able to correct the red over time. And the client needs to understand that. And it's written in my intake forms as well. So red is not that hard to correct. You just go over it. You know, if it's a light red, target color, or if it's dark red, you just add a layer of green or olive to that, and then do target color over that. But how pigments changed, then we went organic. And organics, I'm not going to name any brand names. Organics, if used improperly, they are extremely permanent. So you have to use a very, very light saturation technique. We don't drill pigment into the skin. This is very light. And then you have to use really extra warm colors. You have to really understand your color theory. And you have to test the colors against the client's skin tone and then against the hair. So each color in the brow has about 3 tones to it. You have like a medium brown, you'll have a warm, you'll have a neutral, and you have a cool. So you have to be able to gauge your client's skin tone against that. Now what's happening is we're having more hybrid pigments, which are really exciting to me because we're hoping to balance out that the difference between going too cold or too red. So I started using some of those in very, very high-end companies. I only use high-end pigments with my clients. So I started using more of those and incorporating more of those into my practice. So it depends. And sometimes I'll even ask my clients, like, you know, and I did a poll on Instagram about this. You'd be surprised about the results. I asked them, when they come into the office, do you want this to last? Do you want it to stay for a long time and then have, possibility of it going colder and then I'll have to correct it? Or do you want it to fade in like a year and a half and then we'll just keep doing touch-ups a year and a half? Different pigment formulations are made differently. And I know that there's this big controversy about semi-permanent and permanent. Okay, yes, semi-permanent is permanent, but we have to call it semi-permanent because it does fade faster. It simply does. And so clients need to understand that difference. And in Europe, it's actually illegal to call these types of pigments permanent because it's misleading to the client. So you'll see in Europe them using SPMU, whereas in America, people get all bent out of shape about it. It's like, no, it's really, this is the difference. It requires a longer explanation. But the clients need to understand that because they need to know if they want to upkeep their brows that they're going to have to pay a maintenance. And I always think, put the product up front, let the client know what they're buying. So that way they're always happy because they understood the process. I've had people, especially for removals, come into my office, even though we've talked to them over the phone and explained to them the process. When they come into the office and talk to me, and then I will explain, really in depth, I've had them leave because they didn't want to go through with it. That's okay. I'm not mad about it.
Yes.
I'd rather them be happy. So I try to keep them very, very informed about everything. And I work until perfection, whatever it takes. I want the healed result of my work, walking out on the street to be like perfection. So that's extremely important to me. So sometimes you can get it in one session, but mostly with permanent makeup, you got to do 2 sessions, simply because of the body that we're working with. And I never oversaturate on the first session. I just don't do that. It's better to do it, to layer it in that way also, so the client doesn't get shocked,
Yes. Is that where an ombre comes in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ombre is a saturation to desaturation technique. So you would saturate, I call it dark to light. We're never using 2 different tones of pigments. Well, of course you can do that, but that's not what the ombre is. The ombre is simply dilution versus undilution. So you can dilute either with dilution solution, or you can dilute with less saturation in your needlework. So, and then you can choose different needles for that.
So you're not having to have, if you use the little cup ring or something, you're not having to have like 3 different pigments. Then, right.
No, I don't do that. It's too confusing. It's too confusing because then I'd have to diagram exactly, on the client's paperwork, what part of the brow used what color on. And it's really not necessary. It's not necessary. I mean, some super fancy artists will do that, but I always think to myself, I always think about long-term sustainability. I think about, what is this, I want this client to like come back and be happy with their brows like 10, 15, 20 years afterwards. This is the type of thing I'm thinking about. I'm thinking of flawless aging. I'm not thinking about 5 years. So, I want to be sure. I want to know my pigments. I want to know the weights of my pigments. I want to know the molecules of my pigments. Different pigments have different weights to them. They go in the skin differently. They react with the needle differently. So you have to know, which one to use and for what skin. So it's a lot of, this is not something you learn in school. You don't learn it in any class. Nobody teaches it. And I've spent $80,000 on my training over the years I've been doing this, and nobody teaches that. It's something you learn while you're actually working. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you are also a trainer. You train.
I do train
brow artists with, because that's who I met at, that was giving a demonstration at an industry trade show, and just appreciated what she was saying and how she was saying, and it's like, oh my goodness, then everybody needs to know about Brow Designs International. Brow Design.
Thank you.
And also my little pictures up here on my chalkboard, those are things that I had sketched in of brow styles through the 100 years, for each decade. That's so cool. That's another thing too, that people change their style.
That is so cool. I didn't realize that's what that was.
Yeah.
You're so right. That's why we have to go natural. We have to go natural. We can't do these gigantic Instagram brows with carbon pigments that's going to stay in the skin for 20 years. Can't do it. You have to go with what's natural on the face. People, it's funny, like, I I was in one of the groups one time, and I was coaching, just free coaching, one of the help groups, this girl, and I was explaining the shape. And then this girl, who was way overdone with gigantic lips and everything, looks at my photo and says, "Oh, fix your own brows first." And I'm like, fix my own brow? My brows aren't done. Why? This is my natural hair. I don't want them done. I don't need them done. Just because I don't have these gigantic Instagram brows. I don't want that. I'm 47 years old. I do not want this. I want to look young and natural until, gosh, I'm 80. Who knows? Maybe I'll do it. But that's the point. I think ahead. And a lot of these girls who are just starting out, they want to do these Kim Kardashian monster Instagram brows because it's popular. It's popular, and when it's done well, it looks beautiful. Even on more mature women, if it's done properly, with minimal saturation. So that's be a big mistake. And so when it comes to removals, I'm girls coming in with me to see me in their 20s and 30s who didn't have bad work done. They just don't want that brow on their face anymore. And I get it. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing, like, half of my clientele are removals now. Period. Removals. They're like, I want it gone. I just don't want it anymore. Okay. I understand. I get it. I do. So I was very careful about anything I put on my face. I have my lips done. That's it. I need them. I need my lips. My brows, no.
The color looks good. Your brows or your lips are beautiful, and so are your brows. There is a book that I got, and I thumb through it every once in a while. Maybe 20 years ago or 25 years, I don't know, a long time ago. That's called Wrinkles Are God's Makeup. And in the book, it's also showing, like, our faces are not symmetrical. My eyebrows are definitely not symmetrical. Yeah. This eyebrow has more to it. And I don't want somebody to put a template on here to do and try to make my brows look like they're matching twins.
Yeah, you're not the only person who's ever said that to me. There seems to be this obsession in the industry with, like, ultra symmetry, like they have to be symmetrical, and some people are just really crazy about it. But I talk to normal people out of the industry, and they're like, no way, I don't want them to be symmetrical. They tell me this, and these are people who are not beauty artists, or they're just, maybe they're in the music industry, because I'm very, very, very much into music here in New York, and that's what my colleagues tell me. So, I like to get different opinions and different perspectives also. And that's another thing, we don't put cookie cutter brows on people's faces. We don't put the same shape on people's faces. I traveled the world, and when I travel and I go to different cultures and not just Westerners, I go to places that is, different. North Africa, I was in Tunisia. And, I actually do notice how people wear their eyebrows. I look at magazines, I look at subway advertisements, I look at models, and I see, different face shapes. And I'm like, good gosh, why would you want to put the same shape on every single person? It makes no sense to me. That's why I made that video about the string method, because everybody's brows looks the same. They say they don't, but they do. Sorry, they do.
They do, yes. And the string method, because our audience is comprised of consumers, general public, professionals, and students in the industry. So would you expound a little bit on that string method? Because that's when it was like, okay, I've got to contact Julianna, and I've got to contact her now for her to be a guest on my show, because this is what I believe, what you're saying. But if you'll explain that, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, so the string method is a way to measure points, just to be sure that there's absolute symmetry on the brows. So basically, it just ends up, and I see it with everybody. There's no exception. I don't care who says their brows are different. I look and I study. My mind is very exacting like that, and it just basically looks like the same shape on everybody. It's like the same thing. So it's a method where they take the string and then they just map the points. Like, I don't have a string on me, but I will show you. But they map points on the forehead, and then they take the string and they're just making sure that it's this way and that way. And it's just it's very confusing, and it's very messy. And I was not trained to do that. And I just draw on the client's bone structure. And in fact, drawing, I use a point method. It's taken from plastic surgery. Plastic surgeons use that. I had a client whose husband was a plastic surgeon. We actually talked about that, and he was really entertained by the fact that I used their same methodologies. So what we do is we find the shape of we find like the muscle, where the muscle works. Because if you're drawing off the muscle, you're going to end up with a funny look on the client's face when they're having their mannerisms, when they're acting in regular life. And then you have the bone structure. I mean, the brow should never come, beyond here, and the bone is here. That's the whole point. So we have to draw on the client's bone structure. And oftentimes, you'll find clients whose brows pop up like this, or they go down like this. So in this case, that's their muscle that has slipped off the bone. So that must be corrected either with Botox, plastic surgery, something like that. And I'm pretty honest with my clients about that. If they don't want to do any of that stuff, then I make an eyebrow that fits, within, while giving her a bit of a lift. So yeah, I've fixed some pretty complicated brows. So we'll always talk to them about it, but I never want to embarrass anybody, say, oh, you need plastic surgery. I never want to say that, but I give them options, that could better, their appearance, simple things that they can do, even just Botox. That's I'm not against that. Some people are, and that's fine, but a lot of people don't know that these are options that they can take as well. Very simple stuff. That's my soliloquy on that. Do you have any questions about how I think about brow shape or anything that I had mentioned?
Yes, I do. But while we're just talking about this, because we've mentioned Houston, which the Woodland, right, and then New York City, you have companies both places.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that our audience knows that. Yes. So yes, please do tell.
Oh, you mean about my offices in New York and in Houston? Okay, so I started in Houston. Okay, so here's the story. Here's actually what happened. I kind of fell into this business. It wasn't something that I was like, I've got to be in the beauty business. It's just sort of happened, as lots of things do in life. I've always been an opera singer. I've always been in the arts, and I had just come back from New Zealand on a concert tour. That was in 2015, and I was staying in Texas before going back to New York, because my mother lives in Houston, and she had a salon there. So I stayed with her, and I was 40 years old. I think I was 40. Yeah. And I was like, do I go back to New York and continue bartending and singing? Because, singing, you have to take a side job. It's just the way it is. So I wasn't sure I wanted to do that. So I was just hanging out with my mom, and my mom was just like, hey, there's this new technique called microblading. Are you interested to learn? I said, you know what? I love drawing eyebrows. Why not? I'm an artist. I was an artist when I was a child. I won several awards when I was a kid for art. So I was just like, okay, let's try it. So she handed me her practice tools, and I started practicing. And then she was like, wow, you're really good at this. Why don't you go for training? So I did. I went for training. And then I just became very successful overnight. Like overnight. It was insane. I'd never experienced anything like that. And I never wanted to be a trainer. I am now, and I enjoy what I do now, but it wasn't like what I was, thinking about doing. But people kept seeing my work on social media and word of mouth, and people kept begging me to train them, and I turned them down and I turned them down. And then one day, this woman, I think it was like the 10th lady who came to me asking me to train her, and I said, okay, all right, I'll train you. Give me 2 weeks. Let me get a program together. Let me get, a class together, and so I can do it right. You just don't show up and me just wing it. I'm not like that. I'm very organized. So I wanted to have a good syllabus and a good course. So 2 weeks passed. I had everything put together. I had diagrams, I had the practice materials, I had the manual, I had the online course. I'm real big onto online. I'm super techie. And I contacted her, and she was like, oh no, I already went to training. So I asked her where she went. I'm not going to say who it was. and she told me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like one of the worst techniques. It was one of those techniques where you cross the lines and you go really deep, and the brows end up a mess. And I said, okay, well, if this is what people are doing, then I guess I have to train, because I knew the right technique. I was
Yes.
trained by the right people. So I took it upon myself just to train people, because I didn't want them to learn the wrong technique. So that's how that started. And then I've had people in droves coming to learn from me. So I would have classes like, oh gosh, 2 classes a week, basically full. And then I had so much overflow of students that I had to take on trainers. So I picked the girls that were the most talented and the brightest out of all the people that I had trained. And I had them all come in for a test, for a class. And we did a train the trainer class, and then they assisted me with the big training. And I watched them, and I watched how they performed, and I watched how they dealt with the students, and I watched how they dealt with the models. And those girls who I liked, I chose them, and they helped me. They helped with the company, and they joined. So
Yes.
some of them, moved on to other things, which is wonderful. I applaud that. I think that's great. And some girls are still with me. So yeah, that's how I started. And then in New York, so that started in Houston. I became really popular in Houston. Then, oh yeah, and then New York blew up. Oh, that's the story, right? Good Morning America. They
Good
called
Morning
me.
America. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Did not look for it. I did not expect it. I didn't have a publicist. I had nothing. I did not pay them. Here's what happened. Because I truly believe in training, and I like myself training, learning, like going to classes. I always want to learn more. I want to,
Mhm.
get better at my knowledge, get better at my training. So I went to Serbia to go study with a man from Singapore who was teaching a class in Belgrade. So I had just arrived to Serbia, getting ready to go to bed. I just had a glass of wine. My mother calls me, and she goes, "Pick up the phone right now." I said, "Okay, what is it?" And she's like, Good Morning America called, and they want to call you. Give them your number. You stay up. And here I am in Serbia, and it's a Friday night or a Saturday. I think it's a Friday night in Serbia. And so she's like, they want you here on Monday. I'm like, what? Monday? And I'm in Serbia. So anyway, so then she was like, they want to talk to you first. They're going to call you. So, they called me, and I talked on the phone, and we decided on Monday, early Monday morning. So you would think I flew back to New York immediately and didn't take my class. No, I took my class. I took the class, did my model, hopped on the first plane I could out of there, which was a Swiss Air flight to, where was it, Zurich, and then direct back to New York. Landed in New York at 3:00, booked a hair appointment like that night, got my hair done, went to bed, woke up, did the shoot for Good Morning America. That is how it happened. It was just like the craziest thing that ever happened. And then my career just went crazy from there.
Now, Good Morning America, and also Marie Claire, and I think we're all familiar with Marie Claire magazine.
Yeah.
They have both dubbed you or given you the title of the Brow Guru.
Microblading Guru. Yeah.
Yeah.
New York's Microblading Guru.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny how you get a name, and then it sticks. I still use it. It's important. It was something that was really nice and unexpected, and it helped me launch my career, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity. Not everybody gets those opportunities. So it was just a gift, and so I went with it. So yeah, I'm New York's Microblading Guru. And now I've changed it to like Permanent Makeup Guru, because permanent makeup didn't hit the big time like microblading did. Microblading was it. Permanent makeup is still very popular and people do it, but people don't really understand what it is. And I go around and I talk to people just on the street, or, in offices, when I, just go about daily life. And sometimes people ask me what I do. I said, I'm a permanent makeup artist. And they're like, what? I'm like, cosmetic tattooing. They're like, what? I'm like, microblading. Oh yeah, I know microblading. See, that's how the public thinks. They don't think the same way we do.
And, and going back with history a little bit, and you were talking about this procedure is not something that is brand new. And probably in the past, 35 years ago, 30 years ago, 27 years ago, we could have seen some people that did have the permanent makeup, but was not looking obviously like, oh, you've got a tattoo on your eyebrow.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
That's
Yeah,
what,
they wanted it to be natural.
yes. And you have continued that. And
Mhm.
we probably see people that have your work, and it's not recognizable because you're not going, oh, you've got tattooed eyebrows. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Let's talk about, yeah, the shapes and what you feel about the shapes if someone comes into you and wants a particular, if they want triangle eyebrows.
Oh, triangle brows? I won't do it. I'm not gonna do it. It depends. I mean, triangle brows. I mean, if it's really bad, like, oh, you mean like the square and the Kim Kardashian brows, like the Instagram brows, if they want
Mhm.
that?
Like
If it'll look good on her, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, if it'll look good on her. I've had some really wacky requests that I've turned people down. But no, those brows, it depends. Your more mature clientele is not going to want that. They're simply not going to want it. They don't even know what they want. The young girls, they want that, and that's fine. I just do it with a really light technique that I know is going to fade over time, and I don't go outside the shape. I stay within the shape.
Mhm.
So I don't usually get people that really have crazy requests. Those Instagram brows, the really popular ones, the triangle brows, as you say, when done properly, they heal really nice. They heal really natural. And if you use pigments that are not carbon, use hybrid pigments. So the carbon will stay for a while and it'll turn gray. So we're going around that. But if you use hybrids, you just don't oversaturate it, and then it'll go away. It'll fade. It won't never go away completely. It just doesn't. It won't ever fade completely. But if you stay within the confines of the brow, it'll fade in such a way that no one will ever know it was there. I mean, I have clients that come back and they have nothing left, and then I have clients that come back that say they need a touch up, and I'm like, you just need like one stroke. So it all depends on the pigments. Depends on their skin too. If they have very oily skin, or I call it wet skin. I guess it's hydrated skin. Like some skin is just really wet. Like people drink a lot of water and use a lot of hyaluronic acid and a lot of moisturizers. That skin is going to fade quick. But if a client has really dry skin, that's going to stay for a while.
What about clients that are bleeders,
Mm-hmm.
that bleed a lot?
Yeah.
How difficult is it to work on those?
Microblading, I won't do it. I'll do machine hair strokes or shaded brow, ombre brow. Microblading is not good for these clients. It's simply because it's just too much blood, and the blood pushes the pigment out. So microblading, yeah, there was one time that a girl brought a model to microblading class, and it's not dangerous. So I would never do anything that's dangerous. But she came to learn microblading, so we did the model, and the model had like blood coming down. It happens. It's not wrong. Um, you know, it's not something I would do in my own practice because I do machine hair strokes. But if you're going to microblade, I just told her it's like, okay, well, you just have to keep wiping, and then put pigment mask on top. Pigment mask on top of the cuts will tend to stop the bleeding from happening. And so when you do that, so the real technique is to cut into the skin and push pigment in. So you're not going to keep cutting and cutting and cutting. I see so many girls doing that. It's crazy. And then they end up with these gigantic blurred blobs. No, you cut twice, you rub the pigment in. That's all you need. That's it. That's all you need. So when they bleed and then they don't see the pigment, and so girls tend to want to put more and more cuts, and then you end up with a big mess and scar tissue and everything. No, microblading should be 2 passes only. That's it. But anyway, with the bleeding, it's a thing, but there's always ways around it. I've had bleeders galore, and it has to do with their blood, if they are on blood thinners, or if they drank the night before and didn't tell me, or just wanted to drink. Anything, but I still have great results even with the bleeders.
What about the trend that I'm sure it's not a new trend, but we're seeing more of it now with the people that are wanting to have the shaved heads, but then they want it to look like one day's growth, and they
have
that
scalp micropigmentation. Yeah, I'm not trained in it. I don't do it. I don't have time. I think it's great though. Some people are amazing at it. I've seen such great results. We should never microblade that area. It needs to be done with a 3-liner and probably other needles that I just don't know. I've never trained in it, and I don't have time for it. But there are people who just do amazing work.
There's a different texture. The skin changes when the
Yeah,
hairline starts, whether people
right.
have hair or not, whether it's naturally hairless or whether people have shaved or removed the hair. The texture changes too. So
Hmm.
it's not like skin that's just like
Yeah,
an eighth of an inch lower.
right. That's why it's a certain technique. And so the people who train and who do scalp micropigmentation, they know that skin. They know how to work on it. It's the same reason why I could never do body art. And the same reason why body artists come to me, I have to retrain them. And most of them know, most of them understand that because we're working on a different skin. The skin on the body is not as oily as it is on the face. And then
Mhm.
the skin on the face is not as oily as the scalp. So we have to take into consideration. I mean, it's a lot of it's just a lot of experience working on skin. Like, could I try to tattoo something on someone's body? Sure. Will it turn out well? Probably not. It's because I don't have experience. It's just different skin.
When people the hair on their head or even their eyebrows, or as people are aging, what about that then if they start getting white hair and then there's all of the scalp pigment? And then what about in the eyebrows too? Are the eyebrows still going to look good on someone as their hair turns white and turns gray?
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
it's
we have to use hair dye. Or I see what you're saying. Will the pigments fade? Yeah, they will fade eventually. And if it's oversaturated, they'll fade gray. If it's not oversaturated, it's gonna fade really nice. So, that's something to take into consideration, the aging process. That's why I work very light. Yeah. But yeah, no, clients do ask me that, and I'm just like, well, we could go gray, or I could work light, or you can, use hair dye. So my whole my whole head is gray. Like all my hair is gray except for my eyebrows. But I dye it. Period. I'll never let it go gray. I just won't do it. That's me. That's who I am. Right. I mean, for me, it's hereditary. I had gray hair in my 20s, so it's not a super shocker. But yeah, I mean, it's upkeep. It is or they can just get a removal if they want it gone.
yeah, that would be a lot of work. On
Yeah.
on average, if someone is a first time, let's say that it is someone over the age of 50 that comes to you, to your shop, to your office, and wants eyebrows, how long will they be spending there at a time? Because you don't do it in just one session, right?
Yeah, yeah. Usually an hour and a half. If I'm doing machine hair strokes, 2.5 hours, because machine hair strokes takes a long time.
Yes.
It takes a long time. It depends on needles. So right now I'm working with the 4 flats, just to speed up my time and to give
Yeah.
myself some more flexibility in the look. But I won't use the 4 flats until it's perfect on the latex. But I've perfected with the nanos. The nanos take a bit of a time because it's a very tiny needle. It's a single needle. So if you want to create more texture and more density, you have to go over certain parts of the hair stroke more often to create darker or thicker. And then if you want to flare it, so each one of those hair strokes takes, for me, maybe 3 passes, and it's really exacting work. It's really, really hard. It's super hard. It's harder than microblading. I started doing hair strokes in 2017. It took me a year to master it.
Hmm.
Very hard.
You have some of your tools right there in front of you, don't you?
Yeah. Gosh, I wish I had my nice machine with me. I burned out my nice machines by going uh, too fast with it. Apparently, I was only supposed to use it up to a 10 volt, but I janked it up to 13 because I was doing a removal.
Oh,
Yeah, removals are different. Removals are different. We would never jank our machine up. When I'm doing permanent makeup, I'll never make it go above a 7.5. But with removals, you must. So anyway, I made that mistake and ruined 2 of my machines. So what I do have, I got some new needles in, coming up with my new needle line with my own needle line. So I've been doing a lot of sampling and whatnot. So I got my whole table is full of like needles, samples, and in my machine. This is the ugliest machine you'll ever see. It's my backup machine. It's my, what is it? Mass Tour. It's my emergency backup. So if my machines break, and my nice machines are done in Texas. I brought 2 of my nice machines here. They both broke, and my other nice machines are in Texas. So anyway, I have to use this one for right now, but yeah, that's it. So what I love about this one, it has ink in it because I've been practicing. I really love, like, because I love to paint. It's like painting.
Yes.
So I prefer needles that have a really thin nozzle to them, really thin, so I can actually see the needle. And I wear, these are silly. I wear prescription glasses when I'm working. I have to, because I need to see the needle that we're working with is so tiny. It's literally a quarter of a millimeter in
Yeah.
diameter. And it's a long taper, which means that the point of the needle is even longer and thinner, and it's extremely sharp. So I cannot work unless I can see that needle going
Mhm.
into the skin. I need to see it hit the skin. And most of us can't see that close. So I went to the doctor and I said, this is what I need. He gave me prescription glasses, and so I wear them. Readers work too. I just found out. I didn't know that, but I know now. Yeah, so these are all the different needles that I'm doing, and my practicing, different hair. You probably can't see too well. These are 2 brows on top of each other. Don't judge. I was just trying to do a feathering thing. But yeah, all of my practice, and I'm coming up with a new hair strokes class.
Can you get it
I work
closer to the camera?
Sure.
Get that closer to the camera so we could see you a little bit. And you had mentioned latex. Just for our general audience that is not familiar with, that's what brow artists will practice on, is a sheet of latex. That's the closest to skin. Those are, yeah, well, those are beautiful.
Yeah, let's see if I can get that. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Just working with different textures. Yeah, I've been doing machine hair strokes on my clients now for years, and I wasn't going to teach it. And then again, the same thing with microblading, and now people are asking me to learn it, and it's a very, very hard technique. And I am still trying to think about what kind of students should be that I want to teach. Not,
Yes.
not to be choosy or anything, but it's only for their benefit. Because it's so difficult, they really should be working with machine for at least 6 months before they should take it on. It's just that hard. Yeah. So, but I'm going to be putting a course together, online course, along with the live course. So that's coming pretty soon. I've been working on that, getting the training materials together.
With your online course, students have live models
Always.
that is on camera, or do they come into your clinic, your office?
Okay. They have a few choices there. My online courses always have live models that I'm doing close up, so they can literally see everything that I do, and I talk in the video and I explain everything that I'm doing. That's really, really important. And if they want to do a live model with me, they can come to the studio to work with me for a model. Yeah. So some girls like to do that. Some people take other online courses and then they come work with me on a model, which I found kind of difficult because they didn't learn my techniques. Because everything that I teach is a foundation. It actually has a purpose. I don't just throw information together. I lead them from one step to the next step to the next step. Everything is thought out because I've trained thousands of students. I know how people learn. I've analyzed how the psychology of learning, and there are several different types of learners. Not everybody learns the same. And when I get a student in who has a difficulty with learning, my job is to unlock her mind. Everyone's got a key. So I find the way to unlock their mind to get them to learn. So that's how I learned about psychology of learning. That's funny though, because I recently took, getting off topic a little bit, I also code computer programming. During the pandemic, when I wasn't busy, I put myself through Columbia University. I took 2 semesters of computer programming, and nothing was harder for me. It was just, I literally cried. I literally cried the first month. It was so hard. But I looked at their LMS. It's called a learning management system. It's like an online module. And what I did notice, and I caught from them, and I told them, actually, their psychology of learning, they really got that down. They understand how to take basic building blocks and putting it together. So I was really impressed by that. And it made me feel vindicated that I also knew how to do that. That was just natural for me.
Yes.
So it's just logic, really, at the end of the day.
I want to remind everyone again that you are physically located in New York City and in the Woodlands, which is near Houston, Texas. And all of the Julianna's links are in the description. So you can find her website, her social pages, all of her platforms, email, phone number, text number. They're all of that will be in the description. If you have any questions or are ready to check with Julianna on training, or if you want your brows done by Julianna, then the information is in the description. Before we get to our closing question, do you have anything else that you would like to discuss and to add, Julianna?
Let me think. Yeah, just want to tell people, especially young girls who are just starting in this industry, it's a tough industry, but don't let anybody get you down. Don't let anybody get you down. There are people who just want to hate on you for no reason whatsoever at all. So take it with a grain of salt. That's one thing that I learned. I was super emotional in the beginning when I first started. And now that I've gotten more mature and more experienced in the business, it just really doesn't matter. And I always say, like, even bad publicity is good publicity.
Yeah.
Really, truly is. And most people, they don't need to be hateful, but they just are because they're bored. I think, or they want something to do, or they want to start some drama. Really, it doesn't matter what people say or think. The only thing that really matters is what you think about yourself. And you have no competition other than yourself. Don't think about what Jane down the block is doing. Think about, like, am I a better artist? Am I a better worker? Am I better at customer service today than I was yesterday? Oh, that's how I do. I always judge against myself. It's like, have I improved? Am I improving? What can I do to improve? It's funny because I had friends coming over yesterday, or were supposed to come over, and my apartment was a mess. And I'm thinking to myself, what are people going to think? Like, this is just my office. Like, this is my home, and I have all my tattoo equipment and needles spread out everywhere. But that's how it is. It's an artist's world. And always trying out new things. But yeah, and never stop learning. Don't just take one class and think you're going to be a master. It's not going to work. It doesn't work that way. It simply doesn't. Most of us who've been around for, a bit of a time have spent thousands of dollars in our education and continuing education. It's not a one and done. You don't just come to class and become a master. It doesn't work that way. You have to practice. You've got to practice every day. You must practice every day. Even before I touched live skin, I did probably 100 pairs of brows on latex, morning, noon, and night before I even touched my first skin. And I didn't practice until it was perfect. I practiced until I couldn't get it wrong. There's a difference. You build the muscle memory until you can close your eyes. Well, you probably don't want to do that. But my point is, you can look away, but your hands know the pattern.
Yes.
Your hands understand it. That's super important. You just have more realistic expectations, and don't worry about money in the beginning so much. Don't worry about that, because I guarantee you, if you practice, you put the work in, and you do good work, people will come to you. Word of mouth is the best advertisement. I'm not like so super vocal all the time on Facebook and Instagram, but where I get most of my students and clients is from word of mouth. And that's how I started.
Well, a lot of it has come from me, of word of mouth. I'm directing people to you, and I have been for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Julianna Milin is our guest, and has been a guest. I'm very honored that you're on Happy Skin Over 50, Julianna, because you have been a guest on Good Morning America, Marie Claire mentioned, and so they don't just call anyone. They do not just call anyone. And I appreciate you agreeing to be a guest on our show. This is a broadcast on several platforms. It will stay on platforms, and YouTube never goes away. It will be on YouTube. There will be a podcast. So if you're listening to this on a podcast, Julianna Milin has been my guest, and the tradition we have here on Happy Skin Over 50 of closing is to ask you the question of who or what was really your inspiration in getting you to where you are today, not necessarily getting you to be the international brow artist and trainer that you are, but where you are right now today, which does include international brow training and artist. Who or what has been inspirational?
I don't have idols. That's the strange thing about me. I like aspects of people, but I have a problem idolizing any one person. The people that I admire, actually, in the beauty industry, believe it or not, would be my first microblading teacher, who is Branko Babic from Serbia. The man just put on a great show and created a great product and didn't care what anybody thought or said about him. And he was highly successful. He may not be very popular here in the United States, but there was a time where he was very popular and everybody knew his name. I would say that his business model and the way that he evolved and what he did was really evolutionary. And then another guy, I guess, I don't want to sound cliche, but I've been following Elon Musk a lot lately, and love or hate the man, he doesn't care, and that has nothing money. And I said something about that on Facebook today. It's just a freedom anybody thinks about him, and I'm kind of the same way. I don't have his money or anything like that, but I don't care either. So I admire that, and I admire people who just think outside the box and think big and have big dreams. And if they fail, that doesn't matter. They're not afraid of failing. So, the idea that he wants to go to Mars, well, that's crazy. Will he do it? Maybe. He was crazy enough to think about it. So that kind of a thing, that kind of spirit, I really admire. And that's what keeps me going. And, thinking to myself, I haven't stopped yet. There's still so many things that I want to do. And there's no reason why I shouldn't. There is only today. There's no tomorrow. There's no yesterday. It's only now. So every day we make a decision forward.
And you don't want to be a clone of anyone.
Nah, I couldn't. It would be impossible. But yeah, I really strive for individuality, and I encourage everybody else to find their own individuality. You can copy people that you admire and integrate that into yourself if you admire that. If there's a quality of somebody that you want to emulate, I think that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, we must always just find ourselves and our true calling and our true talents and our passions.
Julianna Milin, Brow Design International. Her contact information is in the description. And Julianna, I appreciate you being a guest on here so much. It's been fun for me. I've learned things, and I appreciate being able to share people that I know with others. And you've been such a wonderful guest. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. It's an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me.